Hello everybody, how you doing today? It's Superfiend here, and welcome to my third and final time-lapse video that shows how I built the Hidden Temple attraction in my theme park Whacky World. The first two episodes were, well, the first episode was kind of laying out the coaster station and the track layout, and then the second time-lapse was heavily focused on a lot of the scenery, the plaza, the Hidden Temple chamber itself. And in this episode, what you're going to see is the surrounding foliage around the ancient pyramid and the pyramid plaza. You're going to see lots of terraforming. That is, the end result will be to completely hide the attraction from most vantage points, and then you'll only get these subtle glimpses of the Hidden Temple ride from various viewpoints around Whacky World. And then I go back in at the very end and you'll see how I decorated the coaster station building that surrounds it and kind of dressed it up as if it belonged at some point to an ancient civilization reminiscent of South Central America, the Mayans, the Aztecs. So what you can see here is I'm grabbing these giant clumps of foliage and I'm dropping them around the pyramid. And what I did to make those is I took a 1 meter post, it's a grid piece, and I put that down, and then I surrounded it roughly in an 8 meter by 8 meter square with different trees and bushes that I thought fit well in a tropical environment. And so the advantage to doing that is you can turn your scenery pieces, or in this case the foliage, into little Lego bricks. And so I made like 4 of them that have different arrangements of the trees and the bushes. And so what you were able to see there is I could just click on one and duplicate it and move the whole thing and set it down. And if there were any individual plants or bushes in that building that were intersecting or conflicting with the terrain or scenery or the paths, then I can just edit that one little building, which consists of, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 foliage pieces, and I could edit that building and just move the few trouble pieces that were in the way. And so that enables me in this particular video, it enabled me to go in and decorate the foliage and the jungle brush, the dense jungle brush around the pyramid very quickly. And in other episodes of my Whacky World Let's Play, it helps me to fill in some of the other areas where I want to have lots of foliage kind of hiding things. Because as I explained in the first 2 videos and some other videos I've made that are time lapses, this whole area, this area of Whacky World is a pirate, it's a tropical, and a lost civilization mishmash. Those are the 3 prominent themes throughout this area. And when you first enter the area from the park main entrance, it's mostly pirate and civilized, and there's not a lot of foliage. But as you move further into the back of this area, the foliage grows denser and starts to take over. So I found it very convenient to combine those foliage pieces into little individual buildings that I could use like Lego bricks. So having placed the foliage around the pyramid, I'm starting to use the terraforming tool, and there's going to be a lot of terraforming in this video. And basically, I'm just burying the whole coaster station, the queue, the drive tires in front, and the majority of the chain lift. Again, because this ride, the theme is it's the Hidden Temple, and I don't want it to be very visible from areas of the park, but at the same time, by not burying it entirely, there are a few pathways where you get some really nice lines of sight to this attraction, and they just kind of, if this were a real park and you were in there and like you look in the background, you see this big mountain, and then you see just like this little chain lift, just this glimpse of the chain lift going up. You know, that would be very exciting. Like, oh, what is that? I got to go check that thing out. And as you walk closer along the path, you know, as you get closer to this ride, suddenly the pyramid comes into view through the foliage and the dense brush. And if you come around from the pathway forms a closed loop. If you come from the other side, then you get a glimpse of the Hidden Temple as it falls off the chain lift, you know, the first drop of the ride, as it kind of disappears into the terrain. And it just kind of creates this illusion and this illusion of, I don't know, mystique and this thing being tucked away. You know, I'm kind of going for, or the idea in my head was kind of like the beginning of maybe Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, where they're in the jungle brush, and like every turn or whatever, you know, they move aside some plants and look, there's some civilization, there's some stuff here. Ooh, how exciting. So that's kind of the look and feel and the atmosphere I wanted to capture with this ride. And the this particular turn of the roller coaster track is very close to the queue. So when I did the terraforming here, because of the queue, or because of the pathway, there was this little hole. So I'm just filling in this hole with the freeform scenery pieces, the freeform rocks, and cleaning up the terrain around there. And you can see right there how close they are together when I fly from from the coaster side to the queue side, or the track side to the coaster station side. Very close together. And I did kind of contemplate in my head like leaving that open, so that if you were in the queue and you were right there, you know, it's always very exciting when you're in a thematic ride like this, as you get closer to the queue station, like you get more glimpses of what the ride's doing. But in this particular instance, I thought they were so close together that, you know, I'm kind of role playing in my head. If this were a real park, that'd be a safety hazard, and, you know, some dummy would stick their arm over there and lose their hand. So I was watching a YouTube video from one of the more popular Planet Coaster people, and they were talking about their parks and the chain link fences, and how, you know, how unnecessary it seems in some ways, because just common sense should prevail. But living in the States and seeing how dumb groups of teenagers, no offense if you're a teenager, but, you know, if you get a group of teenagers together, there's always that one. I mean, we certainly had that one guy in my group of friends growing up where they'd go over there. It's like they see this opportunity, and everything about like common sense says don't go over there, it's dangerous, you could die. But then there's always that one person that's like, well, if it was really that dangerous, they would have fenced it off, so it must not be that bad. And then, you know, then you get some stupid tragedy, and then the park gets sued, or, you know, the news media makes a big deal out of it because, you know, one person can't think straight. So the rest of us have to suffer, and we got to look at ugly chain link fences and all that kind of stuff. So a little bit of a tangent there. So now I'm just continuing to fill in and raise the terrain around the ride. And the end result is that little drive tire section in front is going to be totally enclosed and hidden. But I do open it up. I carve a little tunnel or pathway that leads kind of from the drive tire area down towards where the pyramid is. And I think that's really cool, because at the same time of trying to keep all of this hidden or while trying to decorate it, I also want it to be kind of practical. So, for example, the coaster station, it will eventually be dressed up as if it's, you know, part of the temple complex, but it's not connected to any of the other temple scenery. So when I finally open up that little tunnel and create a pathway from the pyramid to where the coaster station is, it helps to make all the scenery seem practical. Like if this had been real, it's all interconnected, it's all interjoined. You can go from the big temple chamber to the plaza, you can go from the plaza to the pyramid, and you can go from the pyramid up to where the coaster station is. I wanted those all to be connected, because if they're disjointed and they're not connected, then it kind of destroys the illusion of all the scenery. Like, yeah, there's this nice thing here, but it's not connected to any of the other scenery. So, like, how did they, you know, the people that inhabited this, quote unquote, inhabited this, how did they get in here? And so I wanted to make sure that every piece of the temple scenery or the coaster station or the pyramid was all joined up, and you'll see how I accomplished that, basically with little pathways and some tunnels. And here we're just continuing to build up this tall, imposing mountain. And I'm building, kind of like outlining a couple little peaks there. And then completely burrowing, a combination of burying and burrowing, completely burying the coaster station inside this mountain. So it's kind of like the ancient inhabitants or the lost civilization. They carved their way in here. And they, you know, built this room or this chamber inside the mountainside, and, you know, again, just kind of keeping everything closed off and hidden from a lot of the different viewpoints in the park, but still keeping each little part of it that you can go into is, you know, very, very well themed, I think, and dressed up with scenery. So I think it is interesting, but at the same time, you can't see the whole thing. There's no bird's eye view of this ride or this attraction, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that just, to me, builds up all the mystique and the illusion. And if it were real, if you were at a real theme park and you saw this, it's just something for me about that kind of thing, especially when I was younger, was like, man, I gotta go over there. I have to go over there. I have to see it. I want to know what it's like. And the anticipation, you know, like when I was, I don't know, when I was 14 or 13 or maybe 12 or 11, and, you know, you go to a theme park and they have stuff like this, and you can only get these glimpses of what's going on. It makes the whole thing more exciting when you're waiting in line, and it just makes it more cool when you're walking around the park. And you know, like you go on a really cool ride like this, and then a couple hours later you're in line for some other ride, and you're still looking across the park at that other ride that you went on, and you're like, yeah, the chain lift, I remember that. And, you know, it just, those are all good feelings. Those are all good fond memories that I have from when I was younger and used to go to a lot of roller coasters or theme parks. And so I just want to try to capture that in Whacky World, and I think I did a pretty good job. And so, in light of that whole theme, that whole discussion, you can see there that on one side of the hill going, or where the chain lift climbs up, I kind of carved it away. So that chain lift is very visible from the rest of the park. But then on the other side of the chain lift, that's kind of where the plaza and the chamber and stuff is, I still keep the mountain tall. So, you know, again, you just kind of get this glimpse that there's the chain lift over there, but you don't really know what's behind it. And then, as you can see, as the camera pans out and pans back in, you kind of get little glimpses of the pyramid through the foliage and other stuff. So, and we still have this really cool pathway that goes into where the coaster queue is, the coaster station, and closed off. And I don't know if I'll need to go in and add buildings and scenery and stuff in there at some point. I'm kind of leaving it very undecorated for now, because I don't know what it's going to look like or what it's going to require when I actually start the simulation up and have guests and stuff going on these rides. This all these rides and attractions in this pirate area, they're all shut down. None of them are open. So, and the guests can't even get back in here anyways. So all the guests, there's like 2,000 guests in this park, and they're all smushed into this tiny area right by the park entrance, or the map entrance, I should say. And none of them, I've never had any guests back here. So I know that occasionally there's little problems with the guest pathing. They get stuck, and then you have to move them on certain types of stairs and other stuff. I've had problems with that in my other parks. So I have no idea if these pathways and these coaster queues and stuff are going to have any of those issues. I have no idea. I'll be pretty bummed out, actually, if I start the simulation up and find out that the guests are like not able to go on the ride because of weird pathing bugs. But everything should work. I mean, it should all work. So here is that little pathway tunnel that I was talking about earlier that connects the coaster station area to the pyramid and helps to join those two things up. And then when you're on the drive tires going on the ride, it also gives you a little glimpse out of the scenery outside. So, you know, just gives you an extra little viewpoint when you're on the ride, something interesting to look at. And I wanted the chain lift, I wanted it to be kind of like tall and imposing. So, and also kind of have a premonition of like doom, basically. So what better way to do that than with the giant skull rocks that we have in the game. So right now I'm just placing both of those, or two of those, on each side of the track at the top of the chain lift. And then you'll see here I go through a few iterations of trying to light them up and make them look good. At first I try the floodlights, and I don't know what it is. I cannot use floodlights in this game. Every time I try to use floodlights, and they have those really visible, distinct cones of the light, it drives me nuts. It ticks off this like OCD thing that I have, and then I have to get rid of the floodlights. Like, I would love it if there was a way to have the floodlights and have them light up stuff the way they do, but not have those visible cones of the actual light. And I know that's not really realistic, but I never like it when I zoom out and I can see those cones of the light lighting things up. It always just, there's something about it that I can never, it never sits right with me. And then it's weird because I go look at what other people make on Reddit or other Planet Coaster videos, and they use the floodlights, and I'm like, yeah, that looks great. And then I try to do it, and I hate it every single time. I hate it every single time, and I always undo it. So here you can see I've gotten rid of the floodlights, and I'm falling back on the area color lights. These are like my favorite lights to use when I light things up in Planet Coaster, when I light up my scenery. And so I'm still struggling. I'm trying to get subtle lighting on the skulls, but then, you know, the floodlights, they light the skulls up very nicely, but then they have those visible cones that I don't like. So I try the area color lights, and they don't have the visible cones, and they cast that ambient glow that I'm looking for, but they're not strong enough to light things up the way I like. So I wasn't happy with the way those were working here either. And at the end of the day, what I decided to do was actually move them. I mean, see that, like, that's kind of okay, but the further away you get, the less those skulls are lit up, and I really wanted these skulls to be visible from across the park. So the final solution here, the last attempt, was to take the area color lights and put them inside the skulls and give them and now look how cool that looks. Give them this bright orange glow. And why are they lit up orange? I have no idea. There's no fires or anything up there, but I just wanted them to have this imposing glow, and I wanted you to be able to see them from all the way across the park. You know, like, this is a tall, prominent feature of the park, and it doesn't show off the whole hidden temple, but it tells you there's something neat and of interest over here. And so I wanted it to be really prominent, really visible, and I wanted you to have a really good view of what it is up there. So I'm making sure that the lights are angled just right to light up the eye sockets and really capture the overall look and feel. And then you saw there when I put the camera at the bottom of the chain lift that if you're on the ride, it looks very imposing, and there's this big premonition of, like, bad stuff, you know, bad stuff. So I was very happy with the way that turned out overall. And then I cleaned up the back there where the coaster returns to the station, and here we're just putting a roof on the temple. I bumped my desk there. I don't know if the mic picked that up. Sorry if it did. Anyways, so I put a roof on the temple, and so now I'm doing that same thing I did in the previous episode where I knocked out the holes in the wall where the coaster track goes through them. You just delete the pieces, and then take the pieces, or delete the pieces that are in the way, the roof tiles that are in the way, and then select some of the other nearby surrounding ones, split them off from the building, and just use the advanced move tool and advanced duplicate to make minor adjustments and to kind of create this jagged opening. I wish there was a way to make more of an opening that looked kind of like rubble, but we don't have any pieces that look like that. Frontier, if you're listening, can we get some of these sandstone and other pieces that, you know, kind of look like rubble, that aren't so sharp on the edges and so perfect? So anyways, so we got the two little holes there where it falls in there, and I'm just making sure that the coaster car doesn't clip, and that if the guests were really on it, that they can't, like, stick their arm out and lose an arm or a leg. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use the terraforming tool, and I'm going to bury that chamber. I'm going to bury the whole thing under the ground so it becomes completely hidden, and you'll see that here in just a moment. And again, I'm just making sure right now that as the coaster car goes through there, that there's no parts of these holes and openings where someone could stick their arm out and get injured. Again, because you know, every once in a while when I work on this stuff, I still try to kind of make it believable. I know that this park is not very realistic. Like, all of this terrain and stuff is like this is like the Matterhorn at Disneyland times 3. I mean, that's a lot. You know, only Disney could really afford to do this. So this park is not hyper realistic, and you wouldn't see many parks like this in the real world. I don't think you'd have to have a really big budget to build something like this. Like, all of this terrain, I don't even know what you would make it out of. It certainly wouldn't be real earth. It's got to be you know, fiberglass and pretend stuff. So to erect and build all this would take a pretty big financial incentive. And I think most parks kind of strike a balance between kind of between Knott's and Magic Mountain. I would say those are the parks that are local to me, and there's a lot less parks in the world that go as heavy into things as Disney World or as Disney. But anyway, so I still every now and then, so even though this park is kind of over the top and you probably wouldn't see many parks like this in the real world, I still try to make it seem a little realistic. So, you know, I obviously don't want things intersecting with the track and obvious points where it really like destroys the immersion for us as the viewers outside the park. And when I finally go through and write all the POVs and make little videos for all that kind of stuff, you know, I want it to look like it could be a real ride. And so you can see now I've kind of buried this whole chamber, and I'm just closing up around the edges there where the track falls in and then where the track leaves. And every time I terraform on top, the terrain like leaks through the ceiling and I got to go in and clean it up. And it was very fidgety to like get all this terrain and everything to its final form. But again, I'm very happy with the way this attraction turned out. And since we can kind of see it here as I move the camera over towards the edge of the map, the only big regret I have with this ride is I built it too close to the edge of the map. And so my preference would have been to have a more natural transition from the ride scenery to the edge of the map. Like if this whole ride had been scooted over like 10 meters in away from the edge of the map, I could have taken the jungle foliage and I could have put that like all on the opposite side of the plaza. But the way I designed it, it's just too close to the edge of the map, and so I had to pretty much use the terraforming tool to lift the terrain at the edge of the map. And it looks good from inside the park, but it looks really bad when you zoom out and you see that like that straight slope. It'd be really nice if we could maybe like terraform just a little bit outside the edge of the park, but no big deal. So here I am, I'm building another tunnel or another pathway. And what this one does is it connects the plaza to that sacrificial chamber area. And again, this is just what I was talking about earlier. I want all this scenery to look like it was real and used and part of an actual ancient complex or structure. So it doesn't make any sense to have this sacrificial chamber and then no way to get into it. So right here, I'm just going to knock away the walls and fidget around a little bit with the sandstone archways until I get a nice tunnel that goes through here and connects the plaza to the chamber. And again, we don't have a lot of scenery pieces that, to me, scream ancient civilization. And just like with the big tall columns that are outside, I get some pretty good use out of one of the other fountains that's in the game. It's the fountain that has the more like fish scale pattern, I guess, on the outside of it. And you'll see that I use those in a few moments here, and I flip them upside down to kind of create the ceiling of this tunnel on each side of the wall. And let's see, what else can we say about this thing? This ride, this thing took forever to build. This is like, I don't know, 15 episodes. It was hard, and I struggled in a lot of different areas. And ideally, if I could have, I would have liked to have just built this whole thing in one shot and then compiled all this footage into time-lapse and released it ages ago. But it took me forever to get all the ideas for this ride. Like, I would work on it for a little bit or a couple episodes, and then I wouldn't really know what else to do with it. So I'd just go work on another area of this pirate area of Whacky World. And in working on the other areas, I would come up with ideas over there, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, I could use this over in the Hidden Temple. And so I really was not trying to rush myself through this, and I'm happy that I didn't, because I do think that the ride kind of met my overall vision by not rushing through it. But at the same time, like, it took so long to get this done. And any of my viewers that actually watched, like, I don't even know, like 10 of these episodes in a row of me building these things, I really have to applaud them for sticking it through, because it was kind of painful at times. But again, really happy with the way it turned out. And if any of you are interested in seeing like, you know, the real-time footage, you can go find it on my channel. And I talk a little bit about the creative process and some of the hurdles and, you know, roadblocks and things I had a little bit more in detail. Because I think this video is made out of like 8 episodes, and each of those episodes was like 30 to 40 minutes. So I don't know. This is like 3 hours of footage condensed down into a half hour or so. And so if you watch the real-time stuff, I talk a little bit more about my ideas and why I'm doing things in a lot more detail. So if that's interesting to you, I'd encourage you to go check those out. If you don't want to hunt through the whole playlist to figure out which episodes these are, you could shoot me a comment and I'll look that up for you and let you know where they came from. So we can see here again, this is the upside down fountain with the fish scale pattern. I don't know if fish scale is accurate, but it's the best I can come up with. Flipped upside down to kind of create the ceiling of the pathway here. And then again, the cider press is a great piece for ancient stonework. I got a lot of use out of the 2 cider press pieces in this park. So having completed that tunnel or that pathway that goes from the plaza to the chamber, we're now back at the coaster station, and once the coaster station is done, once this little clip is done, then this episode is over. And it was a very satisfying moment for me personally to like kind of put the stamp of done on this ride. And I struggled a lot again. This is another area I struggled with. So I've got this box. It's the coaster station and it's a box. And you know, how do I dress this thing up to make it look like ancient scenery? Like, what do you do? The sandstone wall pieces and floors, those are good pieces. But what else do we have in the game? I mean, if you really look, there's not much. You got the fairy tale pieces. You got those little stone caps that I used a lot of. You got the cider press. Ancient civilizations are known for like lots of stone carvings. And if you look at the stone carvings we have in the game, like we got a parrot, we've got a ship, we've got a barrel, we've got a pirate, there's a princess, there's fish, and there's there's dragons, and there's these little pig things. And the dragons are a nice idea. Like, I would have used the dragons, but they're a little too cartoonish for the look and feel that I was going for here. And then you can see I just flip those, I don't know what they're after, like chimney pieces or what, but those larger stone pieces. There's not a lot of pieces in this game that really work well for capturing the look and feel of an ancient civilization. So a lot of the stuff I did in here was using the little fairy tale caps and the cider press, and I had to come up with lots of different interesting ways to like combine and use those to mimic an ancient civilization. This stuff's carved out of rock, it's dragged over here and piled together or whatever, you know. And that was one of the big struggles I had in designing this whole area. And again, this is only, or not again, I haven't mentioned it yet, but this is only my third, I think it's my third park I've built in Planet Coaster. When I first got the game, I of course built a very crappy park and had a lot of issues with guest traffic and queues not being long enough and, you know, all sorts of problems. And then I built a second park, which was a little bit more planned out and a little bit better. And that park had like 6,000 guests in it, and it had quite a few rides. And then I got to a point in life where it was like, oh, you know, I have the time and the support from my immediate family to work on my YouTube channel, which was something I started ages ago, and then didn't have the time or the support to work on it. But so I was halfway through like my second park, and I suddenly had this time and encouragement to, you know, work on your YouTube channel. You enjoy it, you're good at it, you should go do that. So this is really only my third park in Planet Coaster. So it's not like I sat down and played hundreds of hours of this game in the alpha stage and the pre-release stage, and like really worked on all this stuff. And I actually don't watch too many other Let's Plays. Like every now and then I watch somebody's Total War or Planet Coaster Let's Play stuff. But I really don't watch a lot of other stuff because I don't have the time. I work on this stuff, and then I go to work, and then I basically go to sleep, and I wake up in the morning. And if I can find time to do 1 or 2 recordings or work on footage for my channel in the morning, then I try to do it, and then it's like off to work again. So, you know, given all of that background information and the lack of scenery pieces in this game that are suitable for like a lost civilization or Mayan Aztec architecture, I think I did a pretty good job. And I'm very happy with the way it all turned out. And again, here I am, I'm using the cider press piece and just doing a flip-flop to kind of make it look like these are stone columns. There's not a lot of great stone columns that you can use. There's some stone pillars that look more like Greek or Roman that are very nice. They're very nice, but they absolutely do not fit for the architecture and theme that I'm going for here. So I couldn't even begin to use those. Plus, I just don't think they were the right color either. I'm looking for stuff that looks just more like natural stone, even though I know the Greek and Roman architecture, a lot of it's carved out of natural stone, but that's not stone that you find in Central and South America. Otherwise, the pyramids in Central and South America, they'd look the same, right? They'd be the same color. So anyways, here we are with the fairy tale end cap, very versatile piece, and I'm going to use it here to make a larger stone archway than what we get from the sandstone. And it's basically like, you know, create 2 pieces on opposite sides of each other and then just rotate them around until you have a circle. And so that's what I do here. And again, I think that this kind of helps to give this building the illusion of being part of an ancient civilization or ancient architecture. Because again, when I first built this building, you can see the construction of this coaster station in the first time-lapse episode. I built this thing like ages ago. There's probably 30 or 40 episodes of Whacky World in between the footage now and when I first built this coaster station. And for the longest time, it's just this square building with a couple holes in it, you know, because I use the shop front sandstone wall pieces. But it's a square building, and you know, I looked at it for ages and ages and tried to think of like, how am I going to make this thing look like it belonged to an ancient civilization? Because it's just so hard and uninteresting, and all the transitions between the corners are hard, and you know, there's not curvature, and there's not a lot of pieces in the game that are really suitable for dressing this thing up to look like ancient architecture. So it took me forever to kind of get all these ideas together in my head about how I was going to do this. And at the end, given my background with the game and how I don't watch a whole lot of other people's Let's Plays and stuff, I'm pretty happy with the way it all turned out. And then I wanted to put some idols or carvings and stuff in here. And going back to what I said earlier about, you know, we got the barrels, the ships, the pigs, the parrot. We've got a fish. There's just, I would have preferred statue pieces that kind of, you know, fit the overall theme better, but we don't have them. So I'm using the pig and I'm using the fish, and because none of the other statue pieces, they don't really work. Like the parrot is just out of place here. The boat, of course, is out of place. The pillar or the statue that's a barrel. I mean, why would that be in an ancient civilization? And then for lighting here, I'm using the fairy tale dragon pieces, but I hid the wings, and that makes it look a little bit kind of like a snake head. And snakes are an animal that you find in Central and South America. So I figured, okay, the snake with the fire coming out, you know, like a snake torch, that kind of fits the theme, and that's acceptable to me. So anyways, I'm going to place a couple more of those around, and then this footage is going to be done. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or feedback or criticism about the ride, or you want to, you know, let me know your thoughts on this thing, I'm open to hear it. And I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time, and have a good afternoon.